What we do here is go back.
Hi everyone, it's me again, and Squish Gang is present. And today we have the beginning of one of the biggest projects I've ever done in my life. And as you can see by the timing and the title of the video, this is incredibly long. I have never made a project like this, nor have I ever worked on anything like this before, so we'll see how it turns out. First, a couple of announcements. Of course, I always want to thank everyone for the support. I want to preface that there might be some inaccuracies or things possibly left out in this video. There's been a lot of content deleted since this time, and a lot of people who have left the internet or have changed completely since this time. Because I didn't have internet until late 2017, a lot of this I didn't actually experience firsthand, and I had to get through other people or through other channels. So I want to thank everyone for the support on the channel as well. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share, because this is going to be an absolute behemoth to record and edit and just do everything for. And if you see different makeup looks, different lighting and everything, I am definitely filming this in at least 2 pieces, maybe 3 depending on what happens. First thing too, I want to say fit check. We're doing a fit check. This is a sick day t-shirt. This is something that some of my friends have made. They're artists in Montreal. It's the back. I'm going to tag their store down below. Not to squish them all over. They also make bags and other apparel as well, and you can DM them on Instagram if you have any questions. I'll tag their Instagram account down below. And yeah, the original designs, printed t-shirts, and they're sent to you from Montreal, Quebec. Today we're going to talk about 2016 to 2017 YouTube, which is the golden era of YouTube. Very rarely do you exist in a community and you do not hear someone reference 2016 or 2017 YouTube at some point in the conversation. This is something that comes up time and time and time again, whether that be when you're talking about commentary, when you're talking about reaction content, when you're talking about beauty content, you're talking about lifestyle content, storytelling content, Vine. It is just a very pinnacle turning point in YouTube to the more mainstream platform that it is today. Here's how I have it sectioned. I would assume, I'm going to preface this assuming that no one reads research papers or long form essays. So some is in research papers and stuff, you'll have sections and subsections. So you'll have like section 1, the 2016, and then you'll have section 1.1, early 2016, section 1.2, mid 2016, etc. So that's how it's going to be sectioned in this case. So we're going to have 3 overall sections of the video. Section 1 is Vine Invasion, Section 2 is Commentary YouTube, and Section 3 is Beauty YouTube. And there's going to be timestamps down below, and within those sections, there's going to be like 1.1, 1.2, and then like 2.1, 2.2, if that makes any sense. Because each section has 3 subsections. And typically, if you're familiar with this channel, one of my videos will typically have 3 sections. And so far, I haven't even finished drafting the notes yet because I plan on doing the beauty content section at the end. I have 3 to 4 times as much notes already than I normally do. So I'm not optimistic of this being anything lower than a couple hours. Oh, golly. And then with the end of each full section, so not each subsection, there will be a rhetoric reflection on each of those components. Something unique I can bring to the internet analysis of rhetoric at the end of each section. So first, we're going to get right into it. We're going to get into Vine Invasion. Oh, and finally, I wanted to say that there might be a little bit of sporadic uploading and stuff. I actually got into grad school, and I have to move. I have to organize a move, and it's been a lot. So definitely sporadic a little bit, and I'm trying to also work to pay for grad school because I pay for it by myself this time. So Section 1, Part 1, Vine Invasion. The announcement that Vine was ending was in October of 2016 and would finally shut down indefinitely on January 18th, 2017. With this became an issue for the creators who were part of Vine. A lot of them were making money off of Vine, making fun of other people or their or skits or things like that, and they were making money through kind of partnerships and things like that, because Vine did not actually pay well, which was a big contributor to its shutdown, was disputes with the creators on the amount of money they could make from the platform. With this transition, you got what was called the Vine invasion, which was many Viners coming over to YouTube to hopes to gain success there so they could continue to be social media influencers. This is also because Instagram, things like brand deals and stuff, were not as big of a deal at the time, and they had to look for monetized content. So they had to be able to kind of make money through, ad revenue and things like that. So I've categorized the Viners into 3 sections. We have Viner turned comedian, we have Viner turned blogger, and we have Viner turned storytime YouTuber. So these are the 3 sections that we're going to discuss, and within them we have a whole bunch of Viners. Now here is a short list I made that I'm going to talk about every single one of these people of Viners that became YouTubers. These are just the more prevalent ones that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm missing tons, but alas, these are the ones that we're going to discuss here today, and the ones that I find were the most referenced on the platform from my experiences coming online in late 2017. So we have Tom Harlock, Curtis Connor, Danny Gonzalez, Drew Gooden, Lele Pons, Jesse Smiles, Gabby Hanna, Alex James, Jake and Logan Paul, David Dobrik, Hannah Stocking, Cody Ko, Noel Miller, Amanda Cerny, Brett Rivera, King Bach, and Jay Versace. Those are the ones that I have made on my short list. So within Viner turned comedian, there are actually 2 subsections within that. So this one's going to be chapter 1.1.1 and 1.1.2. 2 subsections I have are the comedic commentary YouTubers, who we're going to talk about first, and then we're also going to talk about the loud equals funny Viners that became comedians at the end. So we're going to start with comedic commentary YouTubers, because that has the one that's, I find these are the groups of people from Vine, some of them, that have had the best growth on YouTube and audience separation. In this list I have gathered, it is Cody Ko, Noel Miller, Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez, Tom Harlock, Curtis Connor, and Jay Versace. However, Jay Versace was one that I thought of because I used to watch his videos.
Can I have some napkins? Sir, this is McDonald's. We don't sell napkins. My bad. Can I have some McNapkins? Of course. Oh my...
But so he used to make somewhat frequent uploads, kind of talking about life, fashion, living in LA, dealing with influencers and things like that. And with these videos, he would use similar caricatures and costuming to his Vines. However, upon looking at his channel, there are only 3 videos left. Reacting to my old Vines from 4 years ago, staying overnight at Shaq's house from 3 years ago, and a video from a couple months ago that was some sort of project of some sort. I didn't look into that too much. All the videos seem to have been privated except for those 3, and very little word from him otherwise. Jay Versace is not someone I suppose who has had long-term success on the platform in regards to being able to stay on it to this point. So next we have Cody Ko and Noel Miller. These people have long-term success on the platform, are well valued on the platform, people really like them.
Hey Mom, can you pass me my drink, please?
Sure, honey. Here you go.
Mom, drink it, pussy.
So Cody Ko's first video in 2014 was called My #First Post on YouTube.com, which he did a Q&A, which he asked people on Instagram to, and Vine or something like that, to give him questions. So that video was just a very, he was always very uncomfortable doing anything longer than those 6 seconds. He was stuttering a lot, he didn't edit it much, he got a phone call 10 seconds into the video and was kind of flustered as a result. Cody Ko caught his footing a little bit more in 2016. He would make short conversation videos. He made one about getting a flatbread sandwich at Dunkin' Donuts, and he was upset that he saved 100 calories to have a shitty sandwich. He would also make Jacob Sartorius videos, which we'll get into that later. We're going to have a lot of trigger warnings when it comes to the commentary section of the video, but as far as this section, we are going to have a trigger warning of sexualization, SA, and predatory behavior overall, but not with Cody Ko and Noel Miller, but I just remember that with Jacob Sartorius videos, because those were rough. When we get to Leafy, we'll get back to that one. So most of his videos were vlog style or reaction style content, and he made a lot of collab videos with people that he was friends with on Vine. Cody Ko does not do that as much anymore. He's pretty much solely kind of interacting with Noel Miller, and they'll have guests on their Tiny Meat Gang podcast. I'll put a video in the cards here where I talk about the Gary Vee episode of the Tiny Meat Gang podcast that was particularly interesting. I am going to put cards in at some points. I can only put 4 or 5 cards in the whole video, and it's going to be really long. So any videos of mine or others that I want to reference or I want to bring will be linked in the description as well. Like later in 2016, 2017, Cody began collabing with Noel Miller. However, the most famous collaborations between the two of them are the That's Cringe series, which did not actually happen until 2018. Right now, we're talking about the golden era, the 2016-2017 YouTube, and this is when all the Viners came over. A lot of Viners had videos from 2013, 2014, often uploading their own Vine compilations. When they actually began regularly uploading to the platform was once Vine shut down. So I made an error when writing the notes for this video. I guess I had scrolled down a tiny bit on Noel's channel by accident. His first video was actually the Colgate Evergreen ad, and the first video made in 2016 was the mukbang that I mentioned. So I just wanted to make that correction here. Noel Miller started with making skit content, with his first video being Nasty Nathan's mukbang review from June 11th, 2016. He also made 2016 reaction style content, a lot of talking about like wacky characters on the news or like super hyperbolic or crazy YouTubers. When you talk into like commentary, like when we're going to talk about the commentary specific section, there's a lot of like talking about like prank YouTubers and cringe kids on Musical.ly and all those types of things. That's kind of the similar content that Noel in particular was making, and he did a lot of reaction content. This was very different than the current style of commentary, which is more similar to what I'm doing, which are more deep dive based, essay style kind of formal commentary that reflects on not only like the actions at hand, but an opinion and an acquiring and bringing something else into the scene. Noel's was very like, I don't know if people understand if they watched the internet in 2016 and they've kind of just been gradually pushed to now, but there's definitely a different like flavor. Like 2016 has a font or a flavor, and Noel Miller's content was very much related to that. When you think, I guess what I can relate to, it's quite similar to H3H2 Productions 2016 content, if you're going to like try something you might be more familiar with. And then also at this time in 2016 and 2017, when Noel's channel was growing, he was collaborating with Cody Co as well. They kind of have a long-standing friendship, which delved into a working relationship that is now most of their projects, tours and everything are done together. Next we have Drew Gooden.
When your parents are in the car.
Hello, Father.
Mom. When your friends are in the car.
What do you mean we're not friends? You're my friend.
First video uploaded February 5th, 2016 called Pre-Google featuring Gabriel Gundacker. I'm just looking at my notes over here because I want to be able to read them. Drew Gooden looks exactly the same. Like, okay, so I know, Mika, 5 years is not that long ago. Okay, listen. Okay, well, actually 5 years ago I was 16. So, and I look the same. Most people, 5 years has some sort of change. If you put a 2016 video and a 2021 video of Drew Gooden next to each other, the only reason I'd be able to pick which one's which is because the camera quality is better on the new videos. That's pretty much it. He looks exactly the same. His lingo's the same. His dialect's the same. His inflection's the same. The way he jokes around about stuff is really similar as well. There's very minimal editing in this first video and is more kind of sketch comedy type videos. He uploaded his own Vine compilations as well. This is something that we'll see as a theme throughout. There's a lot of first videos or early videos are uploaded Vine compilations from these Viners. And then he also made a video called Vine is Gone and Now I'm Homeless. Overall, his content hasn't changed much. A lot of short form kind of themed videos that have sketches in them. And he seems like he was ahead of the curve of like kind of comedic commentary because his style is something that so many people adopt off of now, and how his style has not changed much from the origin of his channel. And if I seem like I'm speeding through this a lot, I think this is me realizing how long this video is going to be. So there's like a panic in my being of like trying to get this through at least to some sort of expediency. Next on the roster, we have Danny Gonzalez.
And now you must choose to save your girlfriend or that bus full of people. Wait, where are you going?
I'm gonna get the bus. I don't know that girl.
Danny Gonzalez's first video was in 2014. This was an upload of his Vine compilations. Then there were some music videos and sketch comedies as well in there, all less than 10 minutes long. This is something that you'll also see with a lot of Viners when they're uploading their first videos, and even Lele Pons did this for a really long time, are these like super short skit type videos or comedy videos, which are essentially as if you took their 6-second Vines and you added like a character arc or like context into it, and the 6-second joke was just kind of prolonged. That seems to be kind of the idea they had. It was like, oh, let's say the road work ahead, I sure hope it does, Drew Gooden Vine, right? The only difference is the video would include like getting in the car and talking about like the car not working well or something, or like the roads being bad, and then like getting to the sign and making the joke, if that makes any sense. It was definitely these just kind of like, they felt like stretched out vines. In the peak of 2016, Danny made really similar videos to Cody Co, which was kind of like, and even actually collabed with him, which were kind of short form like videos just talking about stuff, kind of complaining about something, or talking about something cringe they found on the internet, or just like very like no commentary in the sense of like telling a whole story and doing a whole arc in regards to something. He only started really making longer form content in 2018, which is kind of when he was talking about Jake Paul a lot, which of course is another character that we have in this video. Do not fret, Jake Paul comes later. Next we have Curtis Connor.
Help, I'm under attack.
His first video is called Hot Jokes and Cold Dogs, featuring Jacob Sharp. This is someone that he's still friends with, and I think he toured with pretty recently. The first video was July 21st, 2014, which was, again, made under 10 minutes long. It was just two guys making jokes, very minimal editing. And there's, again, this very similar theme of these, like, short form, just kind of conversation type videos, as if I was kind of sending you a Snapchat to tell you a story about something. Just very colloquial, very no editing, no sharpness. It's just kind of there as if like a friend was telling you something. This is kind of like a personality that I've noticed YouTube has really lost. I know that if I made videos like that, let's say, that would not do well for me. My channel is kind of based off formality, which to me is fine, but I'm saying that's kind of like a little charm that I find is lackluster these days. I will say too, Curtis Connor looks very different. I'm kind of shocked to see pre-himbo king Curtis Connor, like, minimal to tattoos, no facial hair, no piercings, the mullet's not there, really. He just kind of looks like any Toronto guy, like, or a white guy who went to University of Toronto. That seems to kind of be the energy here, which is really interesting. His 2016-2017 content was short-form comedy, vlogs, sketch comedy, and also clips from his stand-up. Curtis Connor is one of those people that very early on, you could see that he had an ideal career in mind that wasn't actually, like, making vines or making, like, internet content specifically. Curtis Connor wanted to be a formal, full-fledged comedian in the way that someone like Russell Peters would have been, or something along those lines. Next, we get to Tom Harlock.
My mum took my iPad away because she heard me listen to Fall Out Boy and she doesn't like the fact that I'm an emo.
Tom Harlock's first video on this channel was doing my 12-year-old niece's makeup. Now, this was in 2017? I didn't have a date for this one. I'll put the date on the bottom because I forgot to put the date for this one. And then he went into kind of reaction content, challenges, more videos with his niece. He didn't, like, it's hard to track, like, his relation to the peak of YouTube, given that Tom Harlock has, like, never been a regular uploader, but he is a part of the Vine Invasion. And a lot of these Vine Invasion people will make, like, Vine Where Are They Now, or reacting to my old Vines, or discussing, like, Vine-related stuff, to kind of, like, withhold that audience that they had before. Tom Harlock's contribution to this is actually reenacting old Vines and ASMR, which was really interesting videos. And I actually remember finding him through those and really, really thinking they were quite funny. Because I would watch Vine compilations when I moved out of my parents' house 2017. Because I was like, people would talk about Vine, they reference Vine all the time. And I had no idea what it was. I had seen like a couple of Vines. My friend made me like a folder on a USB key in like 2015 or 14 with like a bunch of Vines on it, so I could like have an idea of like the culture. And other than that, that was pretty much my access to Vines. I didn't really know any of these people. I definitely didn't know like Curtis Connor, Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez. I found them all on YouTube. Tom Harlock. I don't think there were really any Viners that I knew as Viners, if that made any sense. So now we're getting into our second subsection of this, called the funny, loud equals funny creators. I'm not going to go into like direct person by person in the same way that I did with the other one, just because the content they all make is very similar, and they tend to mostly, like, very frequently, like, feature one another. This category, however, concludes King Bach, Lele Pons, Anastasia, Brent Rivera, and Amanda Cerny. So these people make those, and they continued to make, even when it was like seemingly less popular, they continued to make those like 5-minute or less sketch comedy videos. And they had a lot of like weird slapstick comedy that was also weirdly sexualized when it was like obviously for quite a young audience, which is kind of a disturbing thing that comes up a lot with like the Viners turned vloggers category of this as well. And I don't really understand what that's about. I think that's just because YouTube kind of being the wild, wild west, and because like they're aware of like preteens being kind of weird. They felt like they almost could fill that gap, maybe because traditional media can't get away with that. I'm not really sure why that is, but there's a lot of like attractive women in latex suits, or girls in or half naked women in the thumbnails, or, you know, a bunch of big buff guys. Like, it was a really weird kind of content. And also, of course, Lele Pons videos have the iconic, they call it the Vine thud sound, and that gets referenced in a lot of commentary videos about these people. And in that, these videos, like these loud equals funny Vine videos, catapulted the commentary community. This is because like there was a slew of like everything wrong with Lele Pons. Lele Pons isn't funny, and parodying the skits and making fun of these people who are making these like this cringe content for kids. 2016, if you had let's say like 2021, the word was gaslighting because of Gabby Hanna. The word for 2016 is cringe. Like, the word cringe, like, popped off. Like, if you have one of those, like, Google charts, I sort of got cringe will be high in 2016. It was just, this is also, like, when, like, musically cringe compilations were really popular. Reacting to musically cringe compilations were popular. Even some of the commentary, like, comedians turned commentators from Vine made cringe musically videos. I think Danny Gonzalez did, if I remember correctly. 1.2. We're going to get into what's called a Viner turned blogger. So, will be broken down into two sections. This is the Paul brothers and the vlog squad. While many Viners discuss, I did say made vlogs. Like, I talked about Cody Co. and I talked about different kind of vlog style content made by different people. These sections of Viners were famous for their vlogs and were catapulted and continued to make vlogs. The rest were kind of driven into commentary or sketch comedy. Jake Paul first. Yeah.
Hey, Logan.
So obviously, it's not much I can add to the Jake Paul commentary here. Like, Jake Paul is somebody that everyone knows. So 20 million subscribers on YouTube, does weird boxing stuff now, and has beef with the guy who owns the UFC, Dana White, I think is his name. So Jake Paul's first video on the channel. When I say first video, by the way, it's what's on the channel. I can't, except for Gabby Hanna, because I know that that's not her first video because all the other ones are gone. So there's a bit of a difference here when I say, because I'm waiting for someone to be in my comments, be like, no, the first video was reacting to my mom scream crying. And I'm like, well, that wasn't there when I was looking, okay? I didn't have internet 2016. I don't know what they were doing. So the first video on Jake Paul's channel is March 27, 2014, and is a Vine compilation of he began daily vlogging with his first vlog, Jake Paul Daily Life 1 Swimming, which after 24 days of counting, this is 5 years ago, it's 2017, after 24 days of counting, the title changed from like having a number in them to just kind of regular video titles. I think it's because Jake Paul realized that like daily vlogging wasn't necessarily something that people were into yet, and he could fool people to thinking they were like regular videos, for lack of a better term, if he didn't have like a daily vlog in the title or accounting or anything like that. Jake became infamous for outrage content that commentary channels ate up. This also hugely catapulted the commentary to problematic influencer clout cycle that is kind of almost made by Jake Paul and coined by Jake Paul. This exchange of exposure for Jake and these channels made Jake Paul like a YouTube superstar. So much of the comedians, there was like a heavy sexual implications in his videos. Again, a lot of like really attractive women, or there was some, I can't remember if he took them down, but I had one called like Losing My Virginity or something. I remember that was like way after 2016, but I remember that being a thing as well. He would very much like manipulate like people within Team 10, and he like launched the Team 10 content house. And I think this came from the idea that like all the Viners lived in this apartment, if I remember correctly, was on like Vine Street, or the building was called Vine, and I can't remember the address, I'll put the address, it's an infamous address, but so they all lived in like in an apartment unit, like complex together, right? So Jake Paul kind of took that idea and made the Team 10 content house, and with that content house, that was a very famous thing as well. This had a lot of people that were on the come up, and Jake Paul had contracts with all of them that he would get a percent of their earnings to feature them in the videos, and they would all kind of exchange clout together. This is like what the Hype House is, more or less, except the Hype House, instead of running on people's earnings being put into the house, they have to do sponsorships in exchange for a subsidiary or some other like a company paying for the house. Team 10 House was dissolved within a couple of years of its existence. I remember, if I remember correctly, by the end of 2019, it was completely dissolved. Like, it doesn't even exist anymore. Jake Paul just owns the house still because he has like so much money. And the Team 10 house was also on the news for like lighting a chair on fire and throwing it in a pool and jumping on a van from a reporter. 2017 had like an entire genre of like why I left Team 10 videos or what Team 10 did to me videos. You had like Alyssa Violet's video, then you had then that was making Clout Gang and Face Clan versus Team 10. She dragged FaZe Banks into it because it was like, Jake Paul dragged FaZe Banks into this whole ordeal by saying that he had hit somebody in a bar. There was all those allegations with that ended up being completely dropped or allegedly fake. And there was just this constant slew of drama and pulled conflict between these different groups of people in Los Angeles. All people who were making content targeted for like teenager-esque, let's say like we're talking like 12 to 17. And because that was like a primary audience on YouTube, it was always kind of seen as like a place where kids watch things because a lot of people only take mainstream media a lot of people at the time were only taking mainstream media seriously. This made them incredibly popular and made these people millions and millions of dollars, because you also have to remember 2016 was prior to the adpocalypse. So YouTube ad revenues were at an all-time high at this time. You could make, like, if you look now, a lot of YouTubers have merch, they have memberships, they have Patreons, they have podcasts, they have a bunch of different streams of revenue. Before, you could easily live like a multi-millionaire lifestyle, no problem on ad revenue alone. So then we move to Logan Paul.
Girls be like, I mean, yeah, it's snowing, but I'm a girl, and I will look good.
So cute though.
First video on the channel, September 12, 2016, called My First Vlog, The Road to Burning Man. He began immediately daily vlogging, same style as Jake, and the same issues that I have with it. Logan Paul pushed some of YouTube's biggest manufacturing conflict. This came as an opposition between the Logan Mavericks. I said the Lovericks. The Logan, like the Low Gang and Maverick, like thing that he had versus like Team 10. Started as diss tracks, and then we had obviously with this whole kind of trying vibrato between these two men. You get It's Everyday Bro, which there's a post on my spam Instagram, which I'm not telling anybody what it is, but I'll even blank it. But I'll show the post itself. It is me in 2017 being like, what's a Jake Paul? Because like I didn't have like no internet access at all. I just didn't have it at home, right? So I go to a friend's house and I'd like scroll on Instagram while like, at nighttime or something like that. But I wasn't like online really. And I remember being like, what's Jake Paul? Like I don't understand. And I remember one of my first introductions to like YouTube commentary was my friend showing me the Leafy cringe Musical.ly compilation videos. So I've had a really weird introduction online, especially for someone my age, because I'm currently 21 years old. So you'd think like I would have the internet was pretty mainstream for the past 11 years, I'd say easily. It's definitely been a weird life for me because of that. But yeah, anyways, it's just funny to look back, and I remember having that pose of like, what's a Jake Paul? Like I don't understand. Feud between Logan and Jake Paul that is manufactured had actually escalated into Logan Paul sleeping with Jake Paul's allegedly on and off ex-girlfriend Alyssa Violet, which then, like I said, brought the Clout Gang, and then because of the falling out with the Paul brothers, then you had Clout Gang and FaZe Clan all versus each other. And then because Jake Paul, being a problematic individual and having all these conflicts, had people leaving Team 10, and Jake Paul had problems alike to the 2021 David Dobrik fallout. You can see there was problems with racism and exploitation and women being mistreated in this house. So these content cycles eventually boosted comment. I would attribute Jake Paul and Team 10 to the style of modern YouTube commentary. This kind of like having to break everything down and kind of dissect everything and have these long form videos. I think a big contributor to this is the Jake Paul content that was being made, because you had people reacting to Jake Paul in the news. You had people reacting to Jake Paul's vlogs and Jake Paul's Instagram posts and rants and things like that. Then you had all these people reacting to like Jake Paul, like I left Team 10 videos, and then talking about, well, now there's bigger issues than just clout or just being weird and loud on the internet. Because up until this point, more fundamental issues were not talked about in the same way as they are now. Fundamental issues like things that are actually like real problems besides like someone stole my followers or I feel, something like that, or petty relationship drama. We're talking about like legitimate like exploitation. This is where I find like this more constructive commentary. This is where the seed was planted, which I think boomed in 2018 with Tanacon, I think, actually. So next, 1.2.2 is David Dobrik and the Vlog Squad. First video on David Dobrik's channel, February 15th, 2015, called Cool Intro David Dobrik. And I didn't know he had braces. See, this is someone who looks completely different 5 years ago before everyone comes at me about the Drew Gooden comments. So this is just a video of David Dobrik ruining everyone's life. Just a video of David Dobrik, like, wreaking havoc on people who, like, really don't want to deal with him. So as you see, the content hasn't changed at all. He's still doing, like, weird kind of dangerous things and running on stuff and jumping on things in public stores and all that kind of stuff. But the specific, like, coined 4-minute, 21-second vlogs began February 8th, 2016. Which were heavily fatphobic towards people like Gabby Hanna. One of the first ones I saw, which was 4 minutes and 27 seconds, so just before the 421 got kind of popularized, was literally called She Can't Stop Eating. Like, I have to understand that in retrospect, especially because I watch Leafy videos, like, I'm not better than anybody else. In retrospect, I'm like, why do people watch that? Because I don't know if I would have necessarily been into that. But I also can't be certain that I wasn't because hindsight's 2020 and all of these things. So I'm not gonna have a moral stand on anybody, or moral grandstand on anybody, because it's like, what am I gonna say? You know, I was reading books because I had to. That's all, because I didn't have anything else to do. David Dobrik made a seemingly sustainable content house compared to the Team 10 house. This is mostly because I would assume there's a bit, like, I would say a big difference is, like, contractual obligation and the type of system that David Dobrik has run. Because it seems that Jake Paul's was particularly hard to get out of and particularly demanding. And I think that's what a lot of the problems that people had. Despite this, though, the Vlog Squad house had similar issues. Just for some reason, David Dobrik was able to skate by for years, while Jake Paul and his issues with the Team 10 house were kind of being unearthed much faster. But I think a part of this is mostly because David Dobrik himself wasn't outwardly problematic in the same way that Jake Paul was. And I think because of that, people weren't looking into it in the same way. Here's the third section, so 1.3, which is storytime YouTubers. So in this final section of the Vine Invasion, I have Jessie Smiles, Gabby Hanna, and Alex James. First, we're going to talk about Jessie Smiles. Her first video that I found on the channel was How Girls Handle Breakup/Breakup Tips from Jessie Smiles. This was December 3rd, 2013. This is very, like, Jenna Marbles style content from, like, back in the day, if I remember correctly. That kind of, like, what kind of underwear do girls wear type stuff. Kind of advice, girls just chat and being girls content. The storytime videos started within the same year, 2013. So Jessie Smiles was someone who was diversifying her content pretty early on, before the shutdown of Vine, because there's a difference between, like, people like Jake Paul and Cody Ko and stuff, where you could see that there was, like, a huge push into YouTube as soon as Vine shut down, rather than, like, Jessie Smiles, who kind of was diversifying her content early on. Storytime videos started the same year, like I said, topics of living with Viners, her experiences with SA, with Crystal Poor, but as well as, like, music videos, and she had a lot of different content, a lot of kind of relationship-based stuff as well. I actually found Jessie Smiles in 2018, I believe, through her video when she was talking about, like, how mean Lele Pons is, which that was another huge topic of the internet for a while, which is, like, how mean Lele Pons is, and how, like, she's actually a terrible person. There was, like, friends of hers that came out, I think it was Amanda Cerny or something, where she was, like, deleting her Instagram, or, like, deleting stuff from, because, like, it was, like, competition. It was going to pass her in subscribers. Next section we have for storytime YouTubers is Miss Gabby Hanna. So, cannot find much, obviously, on the history of her videos, given that she's, like, deleted them all. I think I have a storytime video downloaded from when I made a video on her a while ago, which I'll put one of the cards in the descriptions as well. I'll put, like, my Gabby Hanna videos. From what I can remember, she made similar content to Jessie Smiles, except Gabby Hanna related more to, or kind of relied more on, like, theatrics, which kind of makes sense given that she was part of the Vlog Squad for the longest time. But Gabby Hanna was almost bridging between, like, storytime YouTuber and, like, loud equals funny, but she didn't make sketch commentary. No, she didn't make sketch comedy, so that's why she's in this category. Gabby's personality came through as very, like, main character. But if you want, like, Gabby Hanna storytime videos, there are people talking about what those were like when they were up. There's lots of content on that. I wasn't around for them. Never watched any of them. I've watched one, which when I was editing a video and I had a clip in a video reflecting on what her video had used, like, her kind of persona used to be like. But I actually don't have any videos on it myself. But, like, besides that one, if I still have it. And I never watched them, so I don't really know. This is, like, you're gonna get a lot of this from me. I wanted to go on this as a way of like someone discovering all of these things and commenting of all these things as someone who is new to it. And let me tell you, my YouTube homepage is ruined with like a bunch of videos, say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because of me like digging around for it. And it's all these like iconic videos from that time now being recommended to me. So finally, in the storytime section, we have Alex James. So the first video was called Someone Refusing Christmas, and then this like line, because they had a lot of, David Dobrik had that too, like, and Logan Paul did like line. Alex James. In December 13, 2013, another person who was realizing that they should diversify content and wanted to make more long-form content, so they actually like put that through ahead of time. They combined vlog style content, rants, and storytime content. They did fall into a bit of drama given the infighting between the Viners due to the essay of that Curse reported to Jesse Smiles. However, other than that, they were like fairly low key and kind of just like lived their best life in their videos. Talked about like there was like a Facebook rant, and Alex James kind of has just been sporadically uploading, not that often as of late, and just kind of doing their thing. So those are the big storytime YouTubers from that time. And this is where we're going to get into the rhetorical reflection of this section, which I have pulled from my rhetoric textbook, The Internet Rhetoric. The Rhetoric of the Internet. So we're going to read from that. So it says, although the internet was created in the 1960s, it was not until the late 1990s that its use became widespread in our culture. Considering the development of print, photography, film, radio, and television, it is clear to see how they all merge together in our digital world. The internet offers us ways to communicate with mass audiences by harnessing the power of each of these mediums. Today, just about every company, university, large organization has an internet connection. Perhaps you have a personal website yourself, like many of your peers. You are interacting through social media, email, instant messaging, blogs, or video conferencing. Just as a medium is developed and introduced into a culture, the internet has united redders and audiences in new ways. It is an interactive medium that can be trolled with almost anyone, making us all redders. Rhetorical theorists are just beginning to address the way the internet is shaping rhetoric. I am addressing how the internet is shaping rhetoric in literally all of my videos. Maybe these weird videos will get me into like research, like will give me like a ticket in. But I'm going to talk about the idea of what's called personalization. What I'm going to talk about is the idea of self-disclosure. So another way that redders achieve intimacy with their audience is through self-disclosure. Through self-disclosure, we, the audience, learn about the redder's personal convictions and the experiences that shape the redder. We come to show the person speaking to us. Self-disclosure in this sense refers to the personal as opposed to the professional experiences of the redder. In other words, self-disclosure does not refer to the accomplishments or resume of the redder. As Jameson in 1988 explained, self-disclosure is not meant to be trumped into an assembled throng, but spoken softly to intimates. The use of self-disclosure by a speaker, noted Jameson, helps create the intimate bond with an audience. She pointed out that despite the unpopularity of the President Reagan's policies, most of his opponents liked the president as a person. She attributed this to his self-disclosure. Talking about one's personal experiences also provides dramatic narratives, not only to entertain, but to serve as proof of redders' claims. Then Senator Barack Obama was a keynote speaker at 2004 Democratic National Convention. As a virtually unknown politician, he used self-disclosure to introduce himself as a public, as a man of humble beginnings, and who followed the American dream. So I think this is what a big component of why some Viners were having issues merging into this long-form content was that shift between having no self-disclosure to essentially depending on self-disclosure. YouTube is a platform of dependent on self-disclosure. They want to know about you. They want to know about your experiences, unless you're like a faceless creator. But even then, when you are faceless, there's often people trying to figure out who you are. People want to know who's behind the camera. People want to know who's behind the opinion. This is because like ethos is such a huge component of rhetoric, and ethos is the personality and structure of the speaker at hand. And with that, you have these certain systems in place, such as the self-disclosure that boosts your platform. Especially this is why storytime YouTubers became such a successful section of Vine, because people were seeking that ability to comprehend the self-disclosure, because the 6-second medium was not allowing that. You're not going to tell a story in 6 seconds. I think this is why like TikTok is also making the videos longer and longer over time, because they understand that kind of drive to want to know somebody through their videos and want to be able to have conversations with them and not just like in live format. And that self-disclosure is one of the biggest components of internet culture. And then if you look at personalization, it says building intimacy with an audience is accomplished by using an individual to embody or represent the idea of the redder's message. When redders tell stories of individual courage, for instance, they are personalizing the values of courage and bravery. They create a relationship with the audience because the audience sees the redder as caring about their individual needs and values. Like I said, so this is why parasocial relationships are such a big component of the internet. This is because of rhetorical personalization, which comes through that self-disclosure. And this is why people were having such a hard time from Vine making this long-form content. And there are many Viners I did mention, because I couldn't find them anymore, that were crashing and burning on this new platform of YouTube because they weren't able to break that bridge. But anyways, with personalization and self-disclosure, we're going to close out this section of the video. So this is the end of the Vine invasion section, and now we're going to move to 2016 YouTube commentary. Now we're into section 2, and probably the most prolific section of this whole video, which is going to be 2016 YouTube commentary. This was the biggest blow up of the YouTube platform. It kind of pushed it to the mainstream given the slew of content creators and the newfound successes that these people were having. There is also, with the explosion of Musical.ly, the loss of Vine, and the popularization of different types of content and new social media styles, this is when 2016 commentary began to peak in response to these newfound things that were happening. Now, for parts of this section, section 2.1 will be the internet versus Keemstar, which will be 2.11, 2.12, and 2.13. Three feuds of internet versus is Keemstar versus Pyrocynical, Keemstar versus iDubbbz TV, and Keemstar versus Leafy's Here. And then we're going to have section 2.2, which is the commentary gamers. Leafy, Pyrocynical, iDubbbz TV, H3, H3 Productions, Grade A, Undereye, Maximo, Filthy Frank, like that whole phenomenon of that group of people. And then section 2.3 will be the bullying kids arc of YouTube content. So starting already at the gate with the internet versus Keemstar, I can't find the exact order of these feuds. This is given just because Leafy's channel has been completely nuked from the platform. And from not being on the platform at the time of this all happening, I can't be certain myself about when these things happened, nor was I aware of them as they were happening regardless. So I have an assumption of what I think the order is in. If I am wrong, I would only be wrong, I think, of what order it is, as in Leafy or iDubbbz TV. But with that, I'm just going to go in by going Pyrocynical, iDubbbz TV, and then Leafy is Here. So Pyrocynical is a commentary channel that still exists to this day. Pyrocynical for a while was a faceless commentator who would commentate over gameplay videos. If you look at the intro, there is a part where it's Garfield Kart. That's because that was a particular game that Pyrocynical would play a lot in his videos. Not to the extent of like how Leafy is Here is known for CSGO surfing, but along those lines.
Oh, I killed all the kids. Oh, I think that classifies as a refund, pal. Honestly, don't care what you do with that code. You could just drive to your mate's house with an Uber driver, or you could go rob a bank with him. Do whatever you want. I don't care. I get the money. No question.
And Pyrocynical was actually famous for MLG content. If you don't know what MLG content is, I'll put that clip in here.
Smoke weed every day.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, baby, a triple!
4.
It was something that was just kind of a weird sense of humor at a time. Turns out, before I knew who Pyrocynical was, I did know who Pyrocynical was because my friends in the 9th grade showed me MLG Teletubbies before I even really knew what it was. Pyrocynical then, however, showed his face eventually, given being actually doxxed by Keemstar. To preface, I have a bit of a bias towards Pyrocynical for some reason. I really like him, I always have. I don't know what it is. Maybe I got a thing for Englishmen, I don't know. But actually, to prove my simping, this is like the only piece of YouTube paraphernalia that I own, is the Pyrocynical YouTubes. And it's still in the box, so yeah, Niall noticed me, please, thank you. Regardless, let's continue on. Pyrocynical would make commentary content a lot very similar to that 2016 font that I mentioned with the Vine invasion. Things like Musical.ly is cringe, or Jake Paul is annoying, or oh, who are all these Viners coming in, or oh, look at this thing from the news. You know, anti-SJW, anti-feminist content often. Very typical of 2016. So what happened was, Keemstar made a video about the Tobuscus allegations. It's not something I'm going to get into in this video because I actually don't understand what exactly happened because of the slew of inaccuracies that came with the reporting on this. But Tobuscus had allegations of some sort of like sexual misconduct or something along those lines. However, I'm not 100% sure exactly what happened with that. But regardless, that's not necessarily relevant here. So Keemstar made a video essentially saying all the allegations were true and going off that Tobuscus was some sort of creepy pedo or something along those lines. And Parcynical just made a video that he said that Keemstar's like the realest of them all, and Keemstar's, you know, that guy in the commentary community, but you should have some sort of statement before talking about how the allegations may or may not be true that we're not sure yet. He needs to have some sort of kind of opening that describes the issues at hand and that maybe there's no certain idea what actually happened yet.
And Tobuscus rant. A video in which I suggested to Keemstar that he should have verbally said that the controversy around Toby Turner's rape was an allegation, mainly because literally 20 minutes after Keemstar's video went public, all of Toby's channels were flooded with hateful comments and dislikes of people.
Keemstar, for some reason, lost his absolute shit on Twitter. Started making all these videos, the famous line of like, if you're gonna swing, I'm gonna swing 10 times harder back. That's one of the Keemstar rants that he made in those Twitter videos. And yeah, it was simply because Parcynical said that you should be more careful with allegations when you are making a statement on something like this where people are not really sure what's happening yet. In like the YouTube culture now, people are a lot more careful with a lot of people will say allegedly, they'll say like, well, we don't know what's happening yet, and because a lot of these situations have come forward and dissolved and come back and swung in a lot of different directions. In the various Keemstar Twitter rampages, he actually, like I mentioned before, doxed Parcynical by putting a picture of Parcynical from his private Facebook on Twitter, which is something that had never really been shown before. Parcynical seems to have had some sort of a desire for privacy, among other things, and was really upset that he got doxxed, and people were making videos of, like, Parcynical face reveal and things like that. Parcynical talked about it on Twitter, I believe, and then, which again, you can't really check because that Parcynical Twitter account got nuked in, like, 2018, and Parcynical got Twitter back, like, last week. So Parcynical had used pictures of Keemstar on his Twitter before, but Keemstar was a public figure who showed his face very frequently, so this is a very different situation, despite how Keemstar wanted to make that comparison. Then Keemstar made a bunch of rampage videos continuing on from that point, saying not Twitter, he did it on live stream, and he said that Parcynical asked a prominent YouTuber to go with him to a furry convention, and was just saying that Parcynical was a furry. Parcynical denied these allegations at the time. Apparently, due to the scandal that happened last year, there was some truth to that as far as what he was into, but not as far as like the actual situation that happened. But Parcynical it was being alleged that he was dating some sort of 15-year-old French girl, but then Parcynical in his video regarding Keemstar showed a sequence of how Keemstar would change the age all the time.
Pyro was trying to hook up with a 13-year-old girl from France. All right, that he was technically like a pedo or weirdo or something, right?
This story is total bullshit. I know exactly the 3 individuals who told Keem and even got in a Skype group chat with him. Unfortunately, I can't name these twats because that's exactly what they want, attention. But in case you don't believe me, I have a DM conversation between one of the individual's ex-girlfriends who's shown that he actually has no idea what he's talking about and he's literally just making stuff up to spite me. Now, this all originated a couple months ago when Keemstar DM'd me asking if I've been dating a 15-year-old girl. And then later, after I made a video criticizing Keemstar about the allegations, he then includes it in a Twitter video against me.
Oh, and Pyro, do you remember those YouTubers that you used to be friends with before he blew up and like fucked them off? You know how they've been contacting me saying that you've been dating some like 14-year-old French girl and shit? Just please swing at me. If you're gonna swing at me, dude. Let me know because I got fucking files on top of files to swing back at.
Now, I don't know whether you heard that. Let me just play that again.
You know how they've been contacting me saying that you've been dating some like 14-year-old French girl and shit? Dating some like 14-year-old French girl and shit? 14-year-old French girl and shit? 14-year-old French girl and shit?
Now, if any of you didn't notice that, he just deliberately lowered the age. Now, originally, this alleged girl was 15, and now Keemstar has lowered the age to 14, probably to make it sound even more impacting and incriminating. And guess what? Later on stream, he lowered the age again to say the girl was now 13, and on top of that, basically insinuating that I was a pedophile.
Pyro was trying to hook up with a 13-year-old girl from France. All right, that he was technically like a pedo or weirdo or something, right?
Where it went from 15, 14, and then 13-year-old, alleging that Parcynical was a nonce, as they would say. However, Parcynical at the time too was only 18 years old, and Keemstar was like, wait, if Keemstar's 40 now, or he's turning 40, Keemstar was like 34, 35 years old. coming at this 18-year-old and then doing all of this stuff. So then Pyrocynical made the video My Experience with Keemstar, as I've been mentioning, which he details everything that had happened. And then this kind of started a new movement of people being against Keemstar. So next we're getting into, because this will bridge into iDubbbz TV's video, which was the infamous content cop on Keemstar. If you notice the opening intro, that's a lot of people call the content cop song. But with this, that is a YouTube like music free song, but has become so infamous for iDubbbz using it that I had that as my intro, because I think the second people will hear that, they'll know exactly where this direction this video is going into. The opening clip of iDubbbz throwing the gnome is from the Keemstar content cop. So this video came in the most infamous form of video at the time. iDubbbz was known as someone who had the potential to end people's careers through those content cops. Did that actually ever really happen? Not really. Maybe for Jinx, because I haven't heard much from him ever since that point. But they are referenced heavily when talking about these people past the point of their creation as well. So the content cop came as a response to Keemstar's blatant abuse of other people on the platform, and the assumption that Keemstar had said that, or had alleged at some point, I guess in the context of the video, that Ian and Keemstar were friends because they had chatted in Twitter DMs. Now, iDubbbz wanted to make it very clear, Ian and iDubbbz are the same person, if anyone doesn't know that, but iDubbbz wanted to make it very clear that that wasn't the case, and that, in contrast, he actually thought Keemstar was a massive piece of shit.
It wouldn't surprise me if Keemstar thought him and I were friends. You know, just because I follow him back on Twitter, he's probably thinking, iDubbbz referred to me as Buddy in the DMs. He must be my friend. So if he ever makes a video on me, I'm going to say, we were friends. We were supposed to be friends. We were never friends. I'm not going to give you my hand in the Twitter DMs and say, by the way, I'm working on a video. You mind not deleting the shitty tweets that you post every single day? Because I need to collect a big fucking timeline of your god-awful hypocrisies and dumb shit that you post. Shouldn't mind me showing our private Twitter conversation where he says he'd ruin my career if he didn't love my content. Wow, you love my content, Keemstar. Maybe we are friends. Maybe we are friends after all.
iDubbbz had made this video. In the video, he does bring up Pyrocynical and other instances of harassment. However, the problem is this video brings up a really key thing in 2016 content, which is this idea of moral grandstanding while doing personal wrongdoings at the same time. Because if you rewatch this video, iDubbbz says the N-word so many times, and says a lot of words that you shouldn't be saying so many times. But however, it was kind of the vibe of 2016 to kind of do these things and to kind of act in this way. Also, sorry if the lighting changed. I just realized I never turned it on. I just put it on now. But this is something that was really common in 2016, where it would be people making content about, let's say, like Jake Paul being weird with women, or with people in the news being cringe or hateful people online, while simultaneously making jokes that are really misogynistic or perhaps racist or hateful in their own right, which was this really weird dichotomy of like the big commentary men that could save everyone, who were attracting these pretty toxic audiences in their own light. Content cops, I can make like my own video on, like the cognitive dissonance of the iDubbbz phenomenon through the content cops. Do I think the content cops are bad? No, because the points that Ian brings up are good, which is why I think they've stood the ground that they have until this day. Because I think if Ian didn't make solid points in his delivery, regardless of like the issues with his delivery, then that would be a different story. But with that, there is still a cognitive dissonance of like his hypocrisy in his own delivery that is kind of interesting. And then the weirdest thing was what made people notice this was like iDubbbz's now wife, going on OnlyFans, and then they were calling him a simp. Which in the content cop, iDubbbz does bring up Pyrocynical, talks about how Keemstar doxed him, and the way that Keemstar will belittle and just roll over anybody in the platform who isn't even friends with him, not necessarily if they're neutral on him, but they'll come for him regardless, and that Keemstar has just said absolutely horrible things to a lot of different people. And now, with that, Ian has kind of created this nature of like that Keemstar is like the biggest piece of shit, and has that infamous song in the video as well, which was like the Smash Mouth parody regarding that had Keemstar.
Cash on my channel's growing bigger, never you mind that I was already banned from my racist, homophobic, hate speech rants. Found a loophole, now it's my go-to boys in the online punch bowl. Next, we'll get into like the shortest of those three feuds, which is Keemstar versus Leafy.
This all started supposedly from Keemstar alleging that Leafy was subbotting his channel. For those of you who do not know, subbotting is when you buy subscribers. So if you see channels sometimes, like especially newer channels, that would have like, let's say 10,000 views a video, but they have 1 million subscribers, there's a possibility that that was subbotted. There's a difference between channels that once had really good views and high subscribers and then all of a sudden they have way less views. That's kind of just an element of the YouTube cycle. But when you're looking at things like there's disproportions and they've never had, like they have a higher subscriber count than their highest viewed video ever, then that's likely some form of subbotting. That's a way to notice. YouTube really cracked down on this in the mid-2010s, so I don't see this very often anymore. I can't think of any channels I've noticed any sort of subbotting for. This came from, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Eki? It's E-C-Y. This person made a video saying that Leafy was subbotting. And for some reason, Keemstar was like, I'm gonna jump on this for whatever reason, and say that Leafy was telling him to subbot as well. Now, is this true? Who knows? Keemstar lies all the time. So I don't really know what to say about that, but with Keemstar alleging that Leafy had told him to subbot, Leafy made multiple Keemstar rant videos. I think there was 3 of them. But interestingly enough, when Leafy is Here came back in 2019, no, when Leafy is Here came back in 2021 or 2020, I can't remember exactly what year that was. He actually made a joke that he feuded with Keemstar for money, so who knows if this was actually relevant or true or not, because Leafy and Keemstar ended up being friends after, which is really bizarre when someone is essentially riding off the clout of the idea that your whole channel is a sham. Especially when Leafy was one of like the biggest, fastest growing channels in this time for this type of content. But Leafy is Here, as many would probably know, was infamous for making content that bullied kids. That was really edgy and Keemstar was kind of in the same light. But Leafy's audience too was known to troll other people. A lot of hissing, a lot of something to do with snakes. And there's videos, like, I can put a thumbnail in one here because I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was a video talking about like the downfall of Leafy is Here that talked about that kind of audience interaction. Leafy's videos also were somewhat substanceless, and he would just make a video every single day, and he would just be really hyperbolic and just go, literally, literally, all the time, and that kind of became a joke as well. So Leafy's content was really a product of 2016, which was just pumping out reaction content and just throwing in a lot of swear words and a lot of edgy jokes in hopes that like it would retain, you know, a certain audience. And actually I watched them. I think because of one, it was a phenomenon at the time, but also because when I got internet, I wanted to be able to like catch up on like the internet culture at the time, and Leafy had so many uploads that I could just go back and see what the type of videos were. But a lot of them were sexual in nature or were, you know, exaggerated in nature and all of these different things. But with that, I want to say as well, the difference between like the sexual driven content talking about women and stuff that Leafy had versus something like the Jake Paul and Lele Pons, because like Leafy's stuff didn't seem to necessarily be for kids in the same way that that content was. However, was it still weird and was it still watched a lot by like young teenagers? Yes. But I wanted to preface that separation because I wanted to kind of hone in on exactly why I had a problem with the Lele Pons, like Jake Paul, like content, because that's like 8-year-olds watching that. Leafy was probably 14 to 18, maybe 14 to 22, if you wanted to be generous. That would be like his age range rather than like someone like Lele Pons where it was kids in like elementary to middle school. We're going to get into the second section, which is the commentary gamers section. So this is where you get that super kind of iconic group of men. And it's all men. I can't, if anyone knows any like iconic female commentators from 2016 that were really prevalent or famous, let me know, because I don't see any. I couldn't find anything really, but maybe I'm just looking in the wrong places. But this is a group of infamous male commentators who were simultaneously overtly edgy but morally grandstanding, as I mentioned. With the Wild West of YouTube, you were essentially being able to build a career entirely off of other people being worse than you. In the sense of like that you were also kind of bad. Because people could argue, you know, maybe that I'm building my career off of, you know, people who are worse than me. While that is true, I'm also attempting to build a career off of commenting on the internet through like a rhetorical lens and through my schooling and stuff like that, but I do know what you're saying. However, I'm also not being blatantly misogynistic, sexist, racist, and hateful in the videos that I'm making. I'm not being, I'm bad, but you're worse in a way that this kind of commentary was designed. It was a trend of all knowing each other as well. A lot of collaborations, which I'll mention in my beauty guru section as well. I kind of talked about that. So Max Mofo is one of the people that was in this group as well, despite not being a commentary channel. Max Mofo made a lot of really shock comedy videos, and he actually had Deadly Twister that had, I believe it was Filthy Frank, Max Mofo, and iDubbbz. Is that it? And then Anything for Views as well.
Hey guys, how you going? My name's Max Mofo. I'm Filthy Frank. I'm iDubbbz TV. Spaghetti dive.
It ain't no sack boy or D-ravioli. But it'll do for now.
It looks like he's trying to smile through the pain.
Beggars can't be choosers.
And then there was also like the iDubbbz Rice Gum diss track that had PewDiePie in it, H3H3 Productions was in the video, as well as the guy who sings, whose name has fallen from my brain, and I wrote half of it and then didn't finish writing it.
You claim that chick when you're too scared to going on PewDiePie.
Little hoe, little bitch, suck my 5.3-inch dick. Admit that you just got pounded. I'd say take the L.
And with too, like these like this idea of like suddenly being able to get rich off of commentary or edgy shock humor, they were kind of all able to get together and see each other pretty frequently, because Filthy Frank was not a commentary channel either. Filthy Frank was kind of almost like a satirical narrative on like the most toxic internet persona. That's how Joji described it, which it makes sense when you're thinking about it in retrospect, because it was obviously so heavily hyperbolic and satirical and just extra for kind of the sake of like depicting a certain person that everyone hates. And they just like they existed together and support a community. When there were certain fallouts or certain issues, there would be kind of sides that would form within that community. I know Grade A Undereye made videos on the H3H3 lawsuit with Matt Haas, but also Grade A Undereye seemed to have supported Leafy, and there's just this different interaction between these people. Before I've mentioned, so Filthy Frank made satire videos based on the worst internet audiences. Max Mofo made shock humor videos that usually involved hurting yourselves. The human cake was the worst thing I couldn't even sit through. It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And then you had Grady Undereye that made short form commentary. Leafy made commentary. iDubbbz TV made commentary, and H3H3 Productions made commentary. Now, H3H3 Productions is an interesting idea on that kind of commentator, because Ethan Klein is someone who has denounced that 2016 persona that so many people kind of romanticize. A lot of people will make the same exact point about Ethan Klein when talking about him now, which is he's so hypocritical. He used to be this edgelord, and now he's all SJW, etc. What's interesting is, while I'm not necessarily saying that's the wrong thing to think about Ethan Klein, but it's also kind of interesting. There tends to be a fallacy when everyone has the exact same like set of talking points that are quite easily disproven. But feel about him how you may, by the way. I'm not saying that you're necessarily incorrect in thinking that way, but iDubbbz also has ditched that persona, and that seems to have not been an issue. When's the last time you heard iDubbbz say the N-word, for example, which was something that he was adamant about being able to say in the peak of his career. Same thing as Filthy Frank just stopped making videos and it makes music now as Joji, and Anything for Views is still kind of edgy, but it also affiliates with Keemstar, so take that with how you will. But Max Mofo doesn't do that shock comedy in the same way either anymore anyway. So a lot of people have ditched that persona, but with H3H3 Productions, I think it's because he also had such a huge channel and was such a driving force in the community, and he didn't take like a long break like a lot of the others did, that I feel like that relates to how people have begun to perceive Ethan Klein. But there was also a lot of infighting in the community. H3H3 talked shit about Parasitical and DMs. He talks about that on one of his podcast episodes. I'm not about to sift through that. I just know that I remember that happening. He also mentions like all the time he doesn't like Leafy, which we know. And everyone versus Keemstar, like I said, because he sucks, except for Leafy at the end for whatever reason. But they typically all covered like similar topics, to like reaction videos to news and stuff like that, prank YouTubers, diss tracks, Vine comedy, like I was saying. But female commentary was yet to be something that really existed in this era. You had kind of 2014 challenge type lifestyle women that were making videos about stuff, or commentary relating to, like, you know, being a girl and doing girl things. But at the same time, that there was not this, like, female commentary community, one like there is now, or two that commented on similar things that other creators that were big in the genre made, which I think kind of makes this dichotomy of the T channel and the, you know, commentary channel, like this idea of the opposition that exists now, because women were not big in the boom of commentary. And I think that's why people are so negative towards women or non-binary, etc., being in the space, because it seems to have been something that was ruled by men for so long. Because now we're going to get into part 3, which is section 2.3, which is the bullying kids arc. So in delving further into the content, one common topic that people like Leafy and Pyrocynical would talk about in H3H2 Productions, and even, like I said, Danny Gonzalez made a video, etc., is like musically cringe compilations. A lot of the time, bullying particularly Jacob Sartorius.
Hit or miss. See, honestly, I feel really sorry for Jacob at this point. He's trying to emote, he's trying to do stuff, you know, while the beat eventually builds up for that sick drop that we're all waiting for, but there's not really much he can do. He's sat in the back of a car, which he's not old enough to drive, and you've got a huge fucking seatbelt basically constricting his tiny little Frodo body.
Which, at the time, I remember being, because I'm the same age as him, or I'm a little bit older than him, by a couple of years max. I'll have to check. I'll put like his birthday, I'll put his age and my age there. But I'm not that much older than Jacob Sartorius. I just remember, like, the videos he made were cringe and they were awful. It was kind of for, like, a thirst trap girl audience of preteens, but at the same time, it was definitely a yikes. But people, like, dogpiled on this kid. Like, Leafy made video after video after video, and I remember he deleted them.
A little bit different happened, and you know what, let's just get into the video, alright? So with that being said, today we're going to be watching Jacob Sagitis' brand new music video. Play that goddamn video.
Before his channel actually got deleted itself, but he had commented on the fact that it seemed like it was too over the top toward the child, because this kid was so young and he was just kind of trying to make an internet career with himself on a dancing app, which nowadays with TikTok seems like something that is a lot more, one, accessible, and two, a normalized. But if TikTok existed with the power it has now in 2016, I have no idea how this would have gone. And the thing is too, with these older male commentators, most of them between 18 and 22, and then H3H2 Productions was a bit older, and iDubbbz was a little bit older as well. It makes these kids don't know how to defend themselves, because it's like these older people are commenting on them and they're just tearing them to shreds. Leafy had the I Play Pokemon Go kid make a diss track about him. And I think Pyrocynical was in that one too. But regardless, there's one of the kids retaliated, and then that became a huge meme online, and people were really awful to this kid. It was for some reason, but the thing is, I think it's because it was a newfound phenomenon that, like, 10-year-olds didn't have access to the internet before this time, right? The internet only really began to be popularized around 2010. So by 2016, the kids that were born, you know, around 2010 or, you know, just before or early 2000s were cognizant enough to be able to access and work online. And the only difference between the people that were commenting on the kids and the kids themselves was that when they were cringy and annoying like that, it couldn't go online. So again, it comes back to that moral grandstanding idea, which is like really bizarre. But alas, take with that what you may. And yeah, that was bullying kids was a huge thing, especially because of the Jake Paulers. The Jake and Logan Paul made a lot of kids content related videos. Like I said, that weird sexualized kids content too. With that new phenomenon, brought a lot of commentary in and of itself. And this new explosion also from Vine, which was an app that also a lot of young people really enjoyed, made this kind of content blow up. They also would do parodies of challenge content, which I still think is kind of funny, especially because I want to make a video on J Station eventually. Because I'm like, oh my god, why? If I had the time or the capacity and not like 5 roommates, I would totally make a like calling Among Us at 3 a.m. video. Oh my god, guys. I'm calling the Sussy Baga at 3 a.m. challenge. Regardless, that is going to wrap up the commentary section of the videos. Just a lot of male edgelords doing male edgelord things on the platform. That was kind of what was popularized at the time. And were romanticized given the fact that they were able to expose a lot of problematic areas of the internet, but also while kind of fueling cycles of misogyny and kind of unjust treatment towards kids in the platform. So while they were able to comment on people like Prank Invasion, annoying and gross, fair, they also were dragging Jacob Sartorius through the mud to a level that I don't think he deserved at the time. So there's kind of that weird toss-up, but a lot of people kind of ignore that. And what's interesting too is even I still like a lot of these creators, and I can see that watching this stuff back because I didn't see it when it was originally out. But a lot of them also have admitted that they were wrong in this way and that this wasn't necessarily the way to approach things regardless. So, alas, that is the commentary section of the video. Now we have to get into the beauty community of 2016.
Hey, so I'm like literally so stupid and I don't have time to formally refilm this portion because I am a student, unfortunately. That's why I look so rough. So you get this as the rhetoric portion because I did film that for some reason. This is filmed with my webcam, so my editing desk, so this is the vibes. And I want to read an excerpt from The Rhetoric Man by Stanley Fish. It talks about the dramatic actor and the rhetoric and the rhetorical man. Because I want to talk about that because this section was reliant mostly on male content creators. So I wanted to kind of get rid of any sort of loose ends when it comes to like how they were able to gain their successes. So there is Homo seriousus, probably, or the serious man, which possesses a central self and irreducible identity. These selves combine to a single homogeneous real society which constitutes a referent reality for the men living in it. This reference society is in turn contained in physical nature itself referential, standing out there independent of man. Man has invented language to communicate with his fellow man. He communicates facts and concepts about both nature and society. He can also communicate a third category of response, emotions. When he is communicating facts or concepts, success is measured by something we call clarity. When he is communicating feelings, success is measured what we call sincerity, faithfulness, or the self who is doing the feeling. There's also this concept in Stanley Fish's work called the rhetorical man, or Homo rhetoricus. I can't pronounce anything. You also see my glasses. Oh, golly. This person is an actor, his reality public and dramatic. His sense of identity depends on reassurance of daily histrionic reenactment. He thus centered in time and concrete local event. This is what I think the specific commentary genre is in relation to the people who we're talking about today, these characters. He is thus centered in time and concrete local event. The lowest common denominator of his life is a social situation. He assumes a natural agility in changing orientations. From birth, almost, he has dealt in not a single value structure but in several. He is thus committed to no single construction of the world, much rather to prevailing a game at hand. He accepts the present paradigm and explores its resources. Rhetorical man is trained not to discover reality, but to manipulate it. Reality is what is accepted as reality, as what is useful. So this is kind of that idea that they are kind of created within the world of events. And they are bound to events and have to kind of amalgamate within that culture, but also kind of cater themselves around these events occurring in the first place. So this is that idea of that constant cycle of pumping out content, trying to find new people, trying to make new arguments for things, trying not to recycle old ideas that was so prevalent in this community. You had to be a big logical person who could point out the bad guy on YouTube. There was this culture of trying to, like I said, the one bad person, but this person's worse. And there would be this constant fighting between those two things. So that's kind of what I wanted to get at the rhetoric section and then didn't film. So this is from Stanley Fish's Rhetorical Man. This is a concept of, like I said, the rhetorical man, which has kind of turned into this like logical man, which I've talked about before, which is that kind of issue between the T channel and the commentary channel. But regardless, now at this, in my state of person that I'm in right now, yikes, we're going to get into the beauty community of 2016 section of the video, which will be a get ready with me with the look that you just saw already. So, yay.
To conclude the video, we're actually going to I'm going to film this part first, and then you'll see this look. Well, you would have seen this look already in the second part. But we're going to do a get ready with me for this section, given the appropriateness of the 2016 beauty community, because this was the most popular type of video at the time, along with makeup reviews. So, we're going to get right into that as I talk about the beauty community. This I would refer to as the peak of the beauty community 2016, because this is when some of the biggest influencers in the game blew up, right? If we're thinking beauty gurus, we're thinking Jeffree Star, Manny MUA, Jaclyn Hill, Nikki Tutorials, James Charles, those influencers, right? Laura Lee as well was a big one at the time. Now, when we want to talk about 2016, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more of a pessimistic way, rather than it being like the peak of YouTube beauty, because that's a way that a lot of people describe it, and I do find that tends to be a little bit, I don't want to say disingenuous necessarily, but not truly reflective of the time at hand, given, again, hindsight. This whole video relies on hindsight, which I feel like a lot of these types of videos, people get mad when you utilize hindsight a lot, because it's like, well, at the time, no one knew, blah, 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 has reflection in the title, because this is dependent upon hindsight. And when we're talking about the beauty community, this is one of the biggest hindsight is 2020 situations. So not only was 2016 the peak of makeup YouTube, it was also the peak of makeup consumerism as well. There are still TikToks and stuff to this day where people will go through like their 2016 makeup that they bought, and then now today they wear like mascara and lip liner, and that's about it, right? So people don't actually feel the need to consume now the way that they did. I would contribute this to a lot of like the anti-haul culture and the anti-consumerist culture that has come out of the makeup community recently. I would say recently as in the past 2-3 years, especially with the pandemic that really halted everything, because not only do people not want to wear makeup under a mask because no one really sees it anyways, people couldn't afford makeup in the way they used to, given the situation with the pandemic. This has resulted in a certain level of issue with everything going on. So my 3 parts for this video, because this is section 3, but section 3.1 is Morphe codes. Section 3.2 is Jeffree Star, Manny MUA, Nikki Tutorials, Laura Lee, as in like the peak beauty creators at the time and their actions. Not specific like the Vine section, but more as a collective. And then this will be specific because this is the start of James Charles's career and the cover boy. So this is what we're going to be looking at in this section of the video. So beginning with section 3.1, we have Morphe codes. So Morphe is currently a very large conglomerate, huge makeup community with multi-million dollar company. As a company, Morphe has kind of in this day and age begun to branch away from YouTubers, given the kind of problematic atmosphere the beauty community has created for itself over the past few years. Now they kind of been collaborating more with like TikTokers and stuff. They had the Madison Beer collection, the Charli D'Amelio, Dixie D'Amelio being the faces of Morphe 2. They had the palette with the girl who dances in the Saie videos, whose name has left my thoughts all of a sudden. And these different creators that are kind of less in the big beauty sphere. They did one with Strash Me as well, who won Instant Influencer with James Charles. So Morphe currently has a huge website, flagship stores, and is located in Sephora. That's at least in Canada and the US. I don't know. Or in the US, I think they're also in Ulta. But that's as far as I know for the atmosphere of where it's currently located. If you're in the UK, if you're in the UK and it has a couple different places, then like that's great. I didn't really know, but so Morphe started allegedly as a private label company. There are videos about this on YouTube. Someone did like a huge deep dive and found palettes on Amazon that looked identical to the Jaclyn Hill Volume 1 released prior to its release, with supposedly the same private label company. The way that Morphe brushes used to be labeled really gave kind of a private label impression as well. So all of these different aspects, people are thinking that it started as a private label brand. As far as I know, they've never really addressed if they have or have not been, but they are supposedly a private label brand. Nowadays, they're definitely not. They definitely have like unique product and they have their own manufacturers and stuff. At the time, that was kind of what it was going with. What's funny enough right now is I'm filling in my eyebrow with the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dipbrow, but I'm using it so sparingly, which feels kind of funny when we're talking about 2016 makeup YouTube, because this is one of the most famous products from that whole era. This is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dipbrow in ash brown. This is like the color and everything is the one that was like super, super famous, but you see how like not blocked my eyebrows are? Because I like laminate them and fill them lightly with the ABH, just so I have like a consistent fill, but still hair-like strokes. So that's kind of interesting when we were talking about this era of YouTube. Morphe found success heading away from the celebrity-based promotion, rather going into influencer promotion. This was seen very rarely. One of the only launches that we had seen prior to this time that worked in that fashion was the Jaclyn Hill and Champagne Pop Becca collection, which Champagne Pop remained, if I recall correctly, Becca's most popular, or one of Becca's most popular highlighter shades all the way until the company shut down in 2021. MAC is a company that a lot of people say has kind of fallen off. And what's interesting is MAC kind of held its guns to keeping only celebrity promotion for branding, which there's pros and cons to this, obviously, given like how problematic a lot of these beauty influencers ended up being. Morphe in 2020 had to distance themselves from Jeffree Star and later distance themselves from James Charles in 2021, given that people were demanding that the company do something given the actions of those people that were working with them. There is a reason why the hesitancy existed and exists now, because of the idea that influencers are not managed in the way that conventional celebrities are, and influencers have a certain association that relates kind of to a more sporadic and perhaps irrational way of existing on their given platform. 2016, 2017, a lot of influencers got Morphe codes. There was a meme. James Charles quite literally had merch that said use code James for 10% off. That was his first merch launch prior to the Sisters Apparel. Manny MUA famously had Morphe codes. Jaclyn Hill, Jeffree Star, all of these like huge parts of the beauty community at the time, and still to this day, you know, all of these characters that I'm talking about more or less are still huge creators, whether they primarily do beauty or not, or whether they're Jaclyn Hill and they just make videos often to plug their launches. A lot of these people have now kind of bridged off to other kind of projects. Like I know Laura and Manny have a podcast. Manny and Laura and Jaclyn and Jeffree have their own makeup, and Nikki Tutorials have their own makeup brands. Their focuses have been put elsewhere. I talked about in the commentary section kind of the idea of the adpocalypse. And the adpocalypse kind of affected everyone more or less to some extent, regardless of if you had super edgy content, just because a lot of companies stepped away in general. And with these companies stepping away, overall, there was just less money in the platform. So given that these kind of codes and stuff were very, very new to the platform, there was this idea, you know, like the code X for whatever percent off. People kind of thought at the time, or at least to what I've understood from looking back at it, that it was kind of like influencers just doing a nice thing for their audience, like giving them a way to save money. There are now a lot of codes that don't actually make the influencers money. They're just reference codes, as in like, oh, they'll know that this person sent them, so they'll continue to send PR or whatever, but the influencer doesn't make commission off of the codes. Because that was kind of the key thing. Was, let's say you had 10% off, like with Morphe. Then the influencer would get another 5 or 10. The exact rates are not always known because not many people want to talk about it because of the distrust that came later, which we'll talk about. There's this idea that the influencers are not trustworthy given their history with these codes, because people did find out that over time that the influencers were making money every time they referenced one of their codes. Because also at this time, there was a lot of internal conflicts created for the influencers. Because a lot of these brands like Morphe that were giving these codes didn't necessarily have the greatest products of all time. I got into beauty in 2018. My first palette ever was that Tarte one that looks like a pineapple. And I remember hearing about Morphe and people say, like, I remember the idea around Morphe being, oh, it's like luxury, but it's priced at drugstore. Obviously now in retrospect, I know that that's not the case. because my worst, scratchiest eyeshadow brushes are actually my Morphe brushes, not my 99-cent Wet n Wild brush that I got as an add-on item on Amazon. So that, in retrospect, obviously was not true. Like, this is a Morphe brush here that I'm using for powder, and this was like $22 Canadian, and it sheds like crazy. I could have gotten like an elf, like a fluffy elf brush. My fluffy elf brush was like $9 that I use for bronzer, and it's much better than this one. In theory, I should just rebuy the elf brush and use that, but alas, we be here doing the thing. So while people might argue with me that there wasn't really an internal conflict with the influencers because they were just money hungry, I do agree, but as we've talked about in the other aspects of rhetoric in this video, audiences are such a huge part of the relationship between the influencer and their income. Like, you have to be able to be supported by an audience to do well on the platform, especially at this time. Like I said, it's kind of as the adpocalypse was approaching, AdSense was the primary income for most of these people, and AdSense requires that you get good views. So if you're not going to get good views because everyone hates you, well, then you're not going to fare well on the platform in general. But yeah, Morphe had become something that was being compared with these influencers to like makeup artist brands and things like that, things of the like of. Now, some people are going to say, well, maybe they've never directly compared them to something like Makeup Forever or MAC. It was kind of the position of everything. At least that's the intent, that's the feeling that I got from it, which I feel like I wasn't in the beauty community either, so I feel like if that wasn't implied, I wouldn't have really noticed. That aspect is debatable, though. You can kind of feel that however you may. Overall, this created distrust for the influencers to the, beauty community, like the influencers to the audience, because people were realizing that Morphe wasn't really the best brand ever, and it had been something that was shilled to them, like, a lot, and people kind of feel like they were duped in how they were being treated by these influencers, given the misleading nature of their promotion. So this section overall was, like, the Morphe codes, and even then just in general, is inspired by Refenstein's video. I don't really know how to say that, and I apologize for not knowing how to pronounce it. Who is an Australian content creator, and she talks about the beauty community quite a lot. She has this really, really good set of videos called, like, the influencer scandals, and then she does like of the beauty community, and she does each era of the beauty community, and that's something that I have kind of referenced a lot for this video. Did I take all of it? No, not at all. I actually kind of skimmed most of it, but now we're gonna get to Jeffree Star, Laura, and Manny. So in 2016-2017, the beauty community had a strong focus on collaboration. This is because they had been kind of, I'm wondering if it had been kind of taken from the idea of the commentary community, because a lot of them were collabing with each other. Like I said before, YouTube was kind of becoming this huge platform compared to what it had been perceived as the past. All of a sudden, people were becoming YouTube millionaires, which was something that was a very new idea to a lot of people. And this is when you started getting a lot of people dreaming of becoming influencers. They were dreaming of the influencer lifestyle, which is something that wasn't really relevant before, especially because other platforms like Instagram and stuff were not seeing kind of like growth like they do now. Instagram models and all that kind of stuff. It was also something that was coming up, but was a very new part of the atmosphere. So with this new idea of the influencer, people were really looking up to people the likes of Manny MUA, Laura Lee, Nikki Tutorials, etc. So with this, they were able to hone in on their common audiences, but also work off of each other's audiences. Given that people like, let's say, Jeffree Star were a little bit edgier than the likes of Nikki Tutorials, but them collabing could kind of get those people that were into both of the characters. And this is not a foreign concept. A lot of people still collab to this day. The beauty community, the beauty content creators here, though, however, are definitely a little bit more careful than they once were, given kind of the environment of the beauty community and how it ended up turning out in 2018. 2018, which I'll reference occasionally, is when the first Dramageddon happened, which was between Jeffree Star, Laura Lee, and Manny MUA, and Gabriel Zamora and Nikita Dragon. Yeah, and there was, if I named somebody, James Charles wasn't in that one if I said him, but they had this, like, picture of, like, bitches be better without him or something like that, with, like, middle fingers or something, and that sparked a whole controversy. Remember at the time, too, it's really key to kind of remember that James Charles's career hadn't really popped off yet. Actually, James Charles had just recently been in his Ebola scandal, which we'll get into that as well in time. These were the players in the game at the time. James Charles was not someone that people were frequently collaborating with yet. I believe he was collaborating with more kind of smaller influencers, if any at all. I can't remember when his Tana Mojo videos and stuff were, like what time period that was. I'm wondering if that was 2018, but I'll have to check in on that because that's just a thought that I had now. That's not. So Manny MUA will start was raised Mormon, and he is someone who worked at Mac and got popular on the YouTube platform. Manny MUA and Laura Lee are still really good friends to this day. People like Jeffree Star, obviously, because of the 2018 Dramageddon, is someone that he's not friends with anymore. But the Manny MUA was one of the first boys in makeup, along with Jeffree Star and James Charles, but had a certain kind of friendly approach to him that people really appreciated. All these beauty influencers, for the most part, to what I recall, worked at Mac, which was interesting. But Mac, however, was one of the first big, like, beauty conglomerates, like one of the first huge, like, beauty stores in the way of, like, how we know makeup now. That's a lot of fallout. Oh boy. Because Mac stores were releasing things like palettes, full coverage foundations, setting powders, and we'll talk about kind of the culture of the type of makeup that was being used at the time. But people were doing makeup artist techniques and makeup artist style makeup to, like, go to school in. It became this way of, like, the idea that casual makeup can't really exist, which was a really interesting thing to kind of reflect on when doing research for this video. When we get into Jaclyn Hill is somebody who was later going to face many scandals, but at this time, I guess the only thing you could complain about was the same as everybody else, which was the use of things like Morphe codes and stuff. But even then, there was still a decent amount of cognitive dissonance around this whole ordeal at this time. Jaclyn Hill was kind of known as, like, the relatable person, someone who's just the girls be chatting and doing girl things, and just kind of someone who you could be comfortable with and watch tutorial with, kind of the likes of Tati Westbrook. However, Tati Westbrook at this time especially wasn't super involved with the community as a whole, which is why I didn't really have her included here, because Tati Westbrook kind of just flew under the radar for years, really, as just someone who was popular with their content and doing reviews. That's what Tati's focus was. Jaclyn Hill was more tutorial based, especially at the time, and that's what they worked. Jeffree Star was someone who was very controversial even at the time, given his MySpace career. For those of you who don't know, Jeffree Star, if I recall, was one of, if not the most followed person on MySpace, which I don't even know what MySpace looks like. I talked about this before, and I referenced it in this video, I would imagine by now. If I haven't, because I can't remember, I film all the time. I didn't have internet until 2017. And because of that, like, MySpace was, like, far dead, despite the fact that, you know, early 2000s, I was in, like, elementary school to, like, late elementary school, so I would have had some idea what MySpace was. Like, I was, you know, existing before it was completely dead. I never even got to see it. So, I don't know what it looks like. No idea. But Jeffree Star's MySpace career was kind of based off of, like, generating as much controversy as humanly possible. Jeffree Star was someone who was purposefully contentious, who was outwardly racist, and just overall, like, an incredibly unpleasant person. And the fact that he ever was able to get the fame he did on YouTube in the first place, it still shocks me to this day. And the thing is, too, there were people that were not aware of that type of career that he had, and he was able to kind of ignore for so long and push away so many times. I had no idea about him when I started watching his content in 2018. I never even heard of him, actually. I watched the Shane Dawson series, and he's talking about all this stuff that he had gone through, and I'm like, who are you? What are you talking about MySpace? What? I didn't even know MySpace had, like, influencer style, like, you know, celebrities who were big on the platform. I didn't even know that was a concept that... I didn't even know the concept of an internet celebrity was something that existed on MySpace. Then we get into Nikki Tutorials. Nikki Tutorials is a content creator that still to this day has avoided most controversy. even some of the controversies that they have been in have not really been their fault, such as the issue with their Too Faced collaboration, which ended up being the product of Too Faced sending NikkieTutorials a different product than the one they actually ended up using, which is such a slime. That's so crazy slimy to me, because like as well as the fact that her contract was bad, was very, very bad. They gave her just a lump sum payment, knowing that they would make seemingly infinitely more money on it than they would have to give her. And she took it because she didn't know how much she would really be worth as someone who was collaborating and making a product like this. So Too Faced heavily undervalued NikkieTutorials. So, and people were upset with Nikkie given the fact that the palettes were really bad quality, despite Nikkie harping about how good they were, which to her it was, because it was presented to her differently than it was in reality. So that ended up getting actually cleared up as a result of that Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson selling the palette for 6-episode series. Investigative journalist Shane Dawson. What a weird era to be into. Also, I apologize if I keep clearing my throat. I have to take my asthma medication a little bit later, and I didn't realize how much it would kind of hinder my ability to say things. However, unfortunately, I don't have time to record this later. So overall, NikkieTutorials is someone who remained unproblematic throughout their career, which is very refreshing from the big content creators in this time. Manny MUA has more or less fled from controversy still, like now past 2018. However, even if there was some off in the times, it's kind of by association, such as how he still seems to support James Charles, despite James Charles admitting that he had texted minors inappropriately in one of his own videos, regardless of the fact if the video is now deleted or not. I also had stated like Marlene Estelle. Marlene Estelle was one of like the very first content creators who ended up kind of going into a makeup brand called Makeup Geek around this. And Makeup Geek is a company you kind of hear from sometimes now, but it's fleeting to some extent in regards to like its referencing. They were famous for selling single shadows. They also collaborated with Manny MUA actually in the peak of his career as well, which is really interesting to look back on as well. So all of these influencers got sent on these like things that were called brand trips. This is section 3.2. This is by the likes of brands like Tarte and Benefit. There's a video, and I can't remember whose video it was, but they actually talked about the Benefit trip. It was NikkieTutorials' YouTube documentary where she talks about the experience of being transgender, because she didn't get outed, she outed herself because someone threatened her to out them. Someone threatened Nikkie to out her for being transgender and saying that she had been lying for years. However, it's not telling someone about something like being transgender is not lying, because it's something that you decide to share when you are ready. It's not something that should just be, assumed will be shared or assumed is something that people deserve to necessarily know, especially because often it's quite difficult experiences for people, and it's still quite, uncharted territory to be transgender in something like the YouTube makeup community, especially at this time. Benefit and Tarte and stuff like that, I believe NARS has done it as well, was sending these influencers on these brand trips, which were these huge, seemingly luxury vacations where influencers got to kind of mingle and talk with the brand and also get access to new product or product that had not been launched yet. And a lot of these brand trips brought a lot of drama. Morgan Adams talks about this in the Shane Dawson series, but that there was also a lot of like bullying that kind of surfaced on these trips. People would kind of, say that you needed to have surgery, or like it was weird if you didn't have lip filler or Botox, and there was this very toxic culture that came from these brand trips. Not only were these brand trips presenting this ability to promote the product and the brand and the relationships that the brand is willing to build with people, it promoted this like influencer lifestyle that not only were you receiving free product to review and you're getting paid to do reviews or paid to do things with people, that you were also able to kind of have this element of wishing to have the lifestyle. This is something that MLMs will promote a lot, is the lifestyle above everything else, which the content creators were kind of pushing with these brand trips. Now, with the combination of like the toxic nature of the brand trips and the relationship with the brand, where people weren't realizing yet kind of what was put in it and the way that people were lying and in how they were reviewing things and kind of acting in a weird way, the glamour of this fell and brand trips have become a lot less of a part of the culture in the last few years. So with these brand trips brought hyper-consumerism. So if we recall the Morphe section, I had mentioned that the FTC had not been able to really crack down on things like brand codes and stuff that people weren't being honest about the state of these codes. And 2016, as a result of things like false promotion and kind of sketchy business practices, brought forward like this crazy hyper-consumerism. If you recall the boom of Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I talked about the ABH Dipbrow and how big of a deal that was for the beauty community, as it was just something that had started this crazy trend of those block eyebrows. And with the trend of ABH came also like the modern Renaissance palette, which is something that is like super hyped to this day. They also had the subculture palette, which was a big flippity flop. That was in 2018, however, but I just wanted to reference that because that was an interesting, what an interesting time to be alive with the subculture drama. But there was a super hyper consumerism with things from NARS products to Too Faced products, ABH products, Morphe products, where people were having these gigantic collections to the likes of like things that people had never seen. People were buying full ABH contour kits that were made for makeup artists that had like 6 shades in them, the shade and light palettes, the huge liquid lipstick vaults, and were being sold by different companies like Jeffree Star Cosmetics even ended up selling them at some point, and still do. This is because influencers were people, and people were not aware of kind of the full kind of aspect of the business practices and things that came into that. So people were kind of trusting them to the level as if your friend was talking to you, not realizing that they were profiting off of these actions. And there were even like the review videos, like the Jeffree Star approved videos, the Tati videos, the Manny videos, and all that stuff that were reviewing things in a way that may not necessarily be honest. Tati Westbrook says that they were always honest about the reviews. I don't know, take with that what you may. With these reviews, though, often came like mediocre products that were being praised as if they were sliced bread, and kind of promoting like ways to use makeup that were not realistic to normal people, doing baking, the big eyebrows, the dramatic liners, the blinding highlight, all this type of stuff that kind of makeup artists were utilizing for their techniques, or drag queens. So then you had people buying all of this massive makeup who didn't know how to use it or didn't really need to, and then you had like these like really interesting makeup looks of people going to high school with the Sharpie eyebrows and stuff like that. And obviously for the makeup gurus, it wasn't that they didn't heed any of the costs. They were getting the product sent to them, they were getting paid for the reviews, they were getting paid to do all this stuff, so they were able to use this huge massive makeup and it not really be detrimental to them. But it was detrimental to people who were overspending to try to live the lifestyle these influencers were presenting to them, which ended up becoming a really problematic aspect of the beauty community beyond just the people involved in the dramas and scandals. We have to recall too, though, that those dramas had not really occurred at this point. That Dramageddon 1 was something that had happened in 2018. So this was still the peak, this was still fueling those cycles of consumerism. The anti-hauls becoming popular did not happen as well until a couple of years later, which now you have a lot of anti-consumerist YouTube content, such as anti-hauls. I know Abby Williams does a lot of this type of content. Now we're going to 3.3, which is James Charles' career. I'm going to make this quick. James Charles started as an influencer on Instagram, who did a lot of makeup look like pictures of their makeup looks and things like that. And then eventually people wanted him to start making YouTube videos, which he did. Interestingly enough, what made James Charles go viral was the graduate photo, like his graduation photo from high school, which is really funny because that was the same year I was graduating high school. So when I remember getting my grad photos done, and I can remember that James Charles photo was circulating really heavily at the time. This also amassed the first scandal, because after James Charles went viral for the photo, people realized that it was edited. I've heard people say this recently too, when reflecting on James Charles. Smoky Glow talked about James Charles. That's what a lot of this knowledge I have has come from, because she went and researched his history and was kind of active during the time. But obviously, it was really obviously edited, and I'm surprised that no one really noticed, which I think is quite funny, but it was like the highlight was like this like square that was like not shaped to the cheek or anything like that. Once and that realization came, that brought the first problem, because it was edited for the features that made it famous in the first place, such as like the popping highlight. Then James Charles did get the CoverGirl deal, which was in October 2016, which was he was the first cover boy. Now, This also amassed the second scandal because a tweet came out of James Charles saying that if he was going to go to Africa, he would get Ebola, which was obviously racist and just a horrible thing to say. And because of that, CoverGirl actually ended up dropping him in February 2017. The career managed to take off, though, given that he was not involved in the 2018 Dramageddon and had really high-produced and pretty unique content, especially for the time. In YouTube, videos like this that were highly edited and highly constructed were not as common. James Charles had his own little collaborations and his own little merch lines and all this type of stuff, so he was kind of able to create his own career kind of on the opposite side of everybody else, and as a result is able to surpass them when they had their own falling out. So 2016 YouTube was Morphe Codes, the influencers that kind of collabed with each other, and then like James Charles, right? So when we go into the rhetoric reflection, we're going to talk about kind of the idea of redemption, because that's something that is really a big factor of when we're talking about the beauty community. So there's things called terms of order when we're talking about this, which says humans tend to naturally seek order given our drive for perfection and hierarchy. As we've seen, however, our quest as order is constantly polluted because of guilt that results from the negative. When the guilt becomes significant enough, an individual Redder or community Redder seems to remove the guilt. In order to remove guilt and restore order, some kind of redemption is needed. This is talking about the idea of the human condition to want to believe people that we like. And I talked about this in the commentary section too, is that idea of that people are really problematic. And at the time, people were kind of have cognitive dissonance due to the desire they had to interact with these creators further. And there's still cognitive dissonance around this in this day. And I'll admit that I have it to some extent as well, especially when talking about people like Power Cynical. So there's also people will kind of make scapegoats when talking about these types of situations. This is another aspect of rhetoric. There are responsibility and guilt to subject of laws of society. There's the idea of pushing it onto somebody else, so society, somebody else, or economics, which in regards to the idea of, well, I had to lie about these reviews, I need to make money, and I need to pay my bills, for example. That could be a direction that people would take. But then when we're also looking at talking about narrative, which is kind of the story of these content creators and the relation that people want. Humans use narrative rationally when evaluating stories they hear, which is based on two standards, narrative probability and narrative fidelity. Narrative probability asks whether the story is consistent with itself, and narrative fidelity evaluates the degree in which the individual components of the story ring true to the audience. So this is kind of coming in when all these beauty commentators and stuff had to make their apology videos and had to make their, like, particularly like when we're talking about Jeffree Star, we're talking about the Jeffree Star versus Kat Von D. People kind of had a feeling that the narrative fidelity of Jeffree Star's story was kind of more relevant. This is also because of all the controversies amassed with Kat Von D at the time that kind of was able to bring forward the narrative probability of Jeffree Star because his recent track record appeared to have been better than Kat Von D's. So that concludes the video. So in conclusion, this was truly interesting to reflect back on this time that's kind of so highly romanticized in the YouTube platform. I think it's just because the dramas that were happening at the time were a lot less serious than the ones that kind of come out now. And I know I probably will have to make a part 2 because I've left out prank YouTubers, Rice Scum and Company, the weird kids content that was out at the time, as well as like the gaming community, things like the Come Up a FaZe Clan, the Call of Duty community. And I know that there's like way more of those topics as well. Please comment them down below. And also please like, comment, share the Amazon wishlist down below too if you do want to support the channel. And because this was an absolute behemoth of a video, this was a lot. And this is something that I've tried working on. Let me know if you like these long projects. I will continue to make them when I do have time. As I said at the beginning of the video, I did get into grad school and I'm trying to move and I'm trying to organize a lot of things. So the possibility of projects like this, I'm not sure necessarily is something that I can keep doing, but I can try. Let me know what other era you want. It would be cool to kind of do 2018 as well, because I find that that's a pretty peak year when talking about YouTube and the process of the whole thing. Or if you just want any specific genre, right? Like I do one on like kids content, toy review YouTubers, and that whole idea. Reaction content too was something that I didn't delve into too much. So let me know what you want to talk about. Or even just comment, what eyeshadow palette you like. I'm kind of curious, actually. Yes, please. If anyone wants to talk about makeup they like, please do that in the comments. I love makeup. As you can see, I got the whole thing going on. I love it. So you guys have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.